Well, a special tribute is being launched today, almost 10 years after a tragedy that sparked one of the most complex police investigations the world has ever seen.
It was the 17th of July 2014 when a Russian missile brought down Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 over eastern Ukraine. 298 people were flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur, including 80 children and 38 passengers who called Australia home. For the next 8.5 years, the Australian Federal Police would pursue justice for them. And this morning, a podcast into that incredible mission is being released.
Joining us live from Canberra is AFP Assistant Commissioner Hilda Surek. Good morning to you, Hilda. You were one of the first investigators on that scene in Ukraine, which was also a war zone at the time. Do you recall just how tense and dangerous that was?
Good morning. Yeah, absolutely. It was quite a chaotic scene. I mean, we knew that we were going into an area that was an active conflict zone. We had to have each time that we went into the crash site negotiated for us so that a ceasefire came in place, and it was just a huge crime scene for us to manage, knowing that the plane fell over 50 square kilometres, but it was really important work for us to do to find the truth of what happened.
Hilda, quite an extraordinary scene, an enormous crime scene. So for you to turn up there and try and find the evidence that might help you get to a conviction was always going to be a needle in a haystack. Quite extraordinary. It all came down to a bow tie-shaped fragment that pierced the fuselage. How critical was that finding?
That was absolutely critical. I mean, it was one of the key pieces of evidence that allowed us to identify that potentially something impacted on the plane. But then we also found a piece of fuselage, and I recall, we had really rudimentary things there with me. I put a pen up against and took some photos for scaling, and in that moment I knew that an external force hit the side of that plane that brought down MH17, killing all the 298 passengers on board.
So there were convictions. Russia has never claimed responsibility. Explain what's happened there.
So the work that the AFP did with our international partners through the International Criminal Court has been able to convict 3 individuals for murder in relation to the downing of MH17. We are always calling upon Russia to ensure that those individuals do complete their sentences within the Dutch legal system. But you're right, Russia has never claimed responsibility for this tragedy.
So convictions, but I guess if you're one of the family members who lost people, and that poor family that lost 3 children and their grandfather in that plane crash, I mean, there's justice in the convictions, but no one serving time in that sense, or those 3 aren't anyway.
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, but, at least we know the truth, and
Exactly.
We hope that we have honoured the victims and their families. I mean, we were relentless in trying to identify what happened, and hopefully that gives some solace. And the podcast that we're releasing, A Search Among the Sunflowers, hopefully gives the stories of what's actually happened there and the relentless pursuit we've all had to find that truth.
Yeah.
Hilda, just absolutely heartbreaking to look at these pictures. I'm so glad you've called it Search Among the Sunflowers. I was one of the reporters that was there in the days after, and it was the contradiction of the scene, this beautiful farmland, these amazing fields of sunflowers everywhere, but in amongst it, Nat, in some of those villages who were in the area, they had people fall through their roofs, like strapped into their seats. It was an incredible crime scene, Hilda. Australians did such an extraordinary amount of work on that, and you should be so proud. Australia should be proud of what we did there as well. So thank you very much for that. And that podcast, as you mentioned, Search Among the Sunflowers, it's a 5-part podcast about the AFP's role in bringing justice to the victims, and it is available today. And Hilda, very good to talk to you. Thank you.
What a story. And you're right, that we know the truth, maybe justice one day.
Exactly.
For all those victims.